The Train Now Standing, written and read by Claudette Evans. Evening, Dorothy. Edna, all set for the night shift then? Henry Hudson said cheerily, wiping his hand down the well-worn greasy line down his trouser leg, before unlocking the heavy metal grilled gate at Hyde Park Corner Underground Station. The shafts had been adapted and the Otis lifts removed long ago to provide additional tunnel ventilation. So the two night cleaners began the long descent down the 122 stairs, connecting ground down to platform level, as there was no direct access from Down Street itself. Dorothy was relieved Edna was silent for a change. She didn't mind cleaning. She was good at it. She'd had enough practice taking care of her mother, whose demands grew daily. Soon, the family would need to make some tough decisions. Her sister had her career, family. They come first, she frostily informed Edna. Upon reaching the old Down Street siding, Edna's screech of a voice jolted Dorothy from her thoughts. What the bleeding hell's them doing here? That's a cleaning job for them what's got nothing better to do, not for the likes of us. Throwing her cigarette butt onto the platform and stamping on it, her words echoing around the white-tiled walls. I remember seeing one of these Pullmans at Paddington Station when I was a teenager, said Dorothy, as she stood surveying the three old Bakerloo carriages. Something else it were, bright blue and yellow ends. They're bound for the Isle of Wight like the last lot. Went on one of them from Ryde Pier to Shanklin on our holiday last year. Grandkids loved it, said Edna, resisting the urge to tell her they weren't anything special. Just ancient, standard underground stock. She'd grown accustomed to Dorothy's flights of fancy and knew further conversation would simply make matters worse. The sudden vacuum from a passing train in the adjacent tunnel on the Piccadilly line almost knocked Dorothy from her feet as she clambered aboard. The carriage was as pristine as she remembered it. 2+1 armchair-type round tables, waiting for customers, their lamps casting a yellow glow across the crisp white linen tea-cloths. That was back in 1966. As along with her parents, she'd wished her sister bon voyage, watching the train depart the station bound for Cardiff. Standing open-mouthed, Dorothy watched as it began to fill with a steady stream of passengers. Ladies in swing coats and floppy hats with low heels and tall boots, girls in miniskirts and shift dresses just like she'd worn back in the day. Men wearing suits with tight-fitting bell-bottom trousers, others more casually attired, looking as though they'd just left college. Dorothy recognized a familiar smell. Old Spice, Henry's favourite. Someone began singing, "We all live in the yellow submarine." And through the open carriage door, Dorothy shouted, "Edna! Come and take a look at this!" Hearing the excitement in her friend's voice, Edna clambered aboard to see what had aroused her normally placid colleague. God blimey, what a bleeding mess! Where have they gone? Disappointment resonated in Dorothy's voice as she scrutinized the dust, dirt and debris, and the questioning look on Edna's face. I was just daydreaming. Looks more like you seen a bleeding ghost, retorted Edna. You and Frank ready for Christmas? Asked Dorothy, having decided against disclosing what she'd seen, knowing her friend would think she'd gone potty. The casual question resulted in a long tirade on her husband's inability to do anything, the kids' lack of interest in getting a job or helping around the house, and Tony Blair's failure to secure her rise for the many benefits she'd claimed, despite holding down this job. Dorothy was glad when the allotted time for tea break came, and she watched as Edna wandered off up the platform for a quick fag, despite suffering from emphysema. Resting her weary bones on one of the dusty seats, Dorothy pondered her lot in life. Her future hopes had been full of promise that day, standing on the platform with her father and mother, her sister leaving to study tourism and hospitality in Cardiff. Then, just a year later, the disappointment when her parents informed her there wasn't enough money to send her to college, let alone university. Dorothy remembered how frustrated her teachers had been. Her pre-exam results had shown such promise. Leaving school, she drifted from one dead-end job to another. Then she met Henry, and how thrilled she'd been when he asked her to marry him, and how excited they'd been, looking forward to getting the train to Cardiff to tell her sister the good news. "Hello, why the glum face?" Looking up, she was surprised to see a dark-haired, dark-eyed young man leaning over her, wearing an identical tank top to the one Henry had favoured. "Oh, just daydreaming," she replied, rubbing her eyes in disbelief. It couldn't be. But yes, it was. It was Henry, the young man she'd planned to marry. Mother had soon put pay to that idea when father died. The emotional blackmail, mother's tears, tantrums, and weak heart, the duty of care. Of course, there'd been letters. There'd been tears. In the end, she told Henry to find someone else. 6 months later, he was dead. Motorbike accident. His mother broke the news. Car coming down the one-way street the wrong way. Police reckoned he was blinded by the oncoming lights. That old BSA bantam, with her clinging on for dear life, her arms entwined around his waist. Recalling those memories, Dorothy began to cry. "Hey, you! Why the tears? We'll have none of that, Dolly Daydream. We've got a future to plan," he said, handing her his handkerchief. He'd been the only one to call her Dolly. His Dolly Daydream. "Come on, cheer up and join the party," he said, taking her hand and pulling her to her feet. "We'll soon be on our way." Arguing was out of the question as he dragged her and into the throng of people in the crowded carriage. "Sit here and I'll go and fetch us a drink," he said, settling her into one of the great Western liveried seats. Looking around, Dorothy realized it was the same people she'd seen earlier. "Oh dear, it must be one of those new pills the doctor prescribed," she thought. "I'm having a funny." And placing her hand on her chest, took some deep breaths, trying to still her thumping heart. "Here you go. Hope you like it. It's called a Cosmopolitan. It's vodka, raspberry and lemon juice." He smiled, handing her the wide-brimmed glass with its narrow stem. "Thanks. You've certainly gone all out on the 60s theme," she said. The young man gave her a curious look, shook his head and laughed. But before he had time to speak, a young lady of familiar age interrupted them. "Dot! How fab! It's Dotty Dot!" It was a voice she hadn't heard since fifth form. "Lizzie Blackwell. It can't be." "Why, yes, of course it's me, you silly goose," came the giggly reply. There was no time for Dorothy to respond. The girl had spun away, dancing along the aisle, weaving through the crowd. Dorothy began to feel confused and dizzy. Faces blurred before her eyes, and she felt a deep, dense fog engulfing her as the voices calling her name became lost in the smog. Then she became aware of someone patting her hand. "Henry?" she questioned weakly as her eyes slowly refocused. "Wakey, wakey, Dolly, me darling. You gave me quite a turn fainting like that." It was as though all the years had vanished. like they'd only spoken yesterday. "Where am I? What happened?" she asked. And looking down, saw she was wearing that floral dress with the wide belt, the one she'd worn the day of their engagement. We're on our way to Cardiff, and I think that drink was a bit on the strong side." "Well, it definitely floored you," Henry replied. Dorothy felt strange, and everything seemed surreal. She was certain the train was moving, and the young man standing before her, yes, it was Henry. She remembered now they were going to Cardiff to tell her sister of their engagement. But that had never happened. The coroner brought in a verdict of natural causes. Post-mortem confirming Dorothy had suffered a massive heart attack. "Gave me a right fright," said Edna, relating once again how she'd found Dorothy sitting in the old Bakerloo carriage. "Dead as a doornail she were, dead as a doornail. Strange thing, though, she looked happier than I'd seen her in a long time."